Hello everyone, my name is Evan Corsiglia and I did my disease report on rabies, also known as rabies lyssavirus. A little taxonomy about rabies. Its order is Mononegavirales. It's in the family Rhabdoviridae. Its genus is lyssavirus, and some related genuses are ephemerovirus and vesiculovirus, and the similarity is just seen between its structural shape, as we'll talk about in the next slide. Some species of lyssavirus include rabies, which we're talking about today, Lagos virus, Australian virus, European 1 and 2 bat viruses, and Dufenage virus. A little virology for rabies. Its infectious agent is rabies virus, also known as RV. It's a non-segmented negative-stranded RNA genome, so during transcription it must be transcribed into a positive single-stranded RNA before it can be used for replication. It directly attacks the central nervous system, so your spinal cord and your brain. It's bullet-shaped, as you can see from these images here. It's about 75 nanometers wide and by 170 to 180 nanometers in length. And as you can see from these images as well, it contains those glycoprotein spikes all around the edge here, connected to your viral envelope. Rabies genome encodes for 5 major proteins, and these 5 proteins make up the 2 major structural components of rabies. So these proteins include the nucleoprotein, phosphoprotein, large polymerase, which is just a multifunctional polymerase that assists in transcription, translation, and replication. It does it all. You also have the matrix protein and the glycoprotein spikes. So the major structure of rabies, its first major component is the helical ribonucleoprotein core, also known as RNP. This just consists of your nucleoprotein template for transcription. And then you also have that phosphorylated protein. As you can see here in the yellow, it just binds that polymerase, which is that red. It binds it to that viral genome for transcription, and that makes up your entire core here. And then you also have that viral envelope on the outside as your second major structural component, and this just consists of your glycoprotein spikes. And your matrix protein is actually present in both components. It's that green here, and it surrounds your viral genome, but also helps assist in that glycoprotein connection as well. So the primary mode of transmission for rabies is direct contact with the virus through the broken skin, mucous membranes, direct insertion in the mouth. It's primarily contracted through the bite of an animal, which is why it's referred to as a zoonotic disease. And most reported cases are from rabid dogs, which is why the nickname for rabies is mad dog disease. There are other modes of transmission. It can also be transmitted through scratches and open wounds, and this is very rare because you typically won't contract the virus from a rabid animal if the virus just jumps into your scratch or open wound. It's very rare. It's almost like you would have to take the virus and purposely rub it into that scratch, which is why it's primarily contracted through the bite of a rabid animal, because it does need to insert deep into that flesh and reach that muscle tissue. It can also be aerosolized, and this is typically only seen in the lab for people working with rabies in close quarters. You also have no documented cases of rabies transmission through person-to-person contact, which eliminates the worry of a pandemic and endemic. So how does the virus replicate and attack your central nervous system? Well, it first must enter through that infection site, usually through the bite of an animal. That rabies virus envelope fuses with that nerve cell. That's one way it's absorbed, or those glycoprotein spikes can bind to those cell receptors on the outside. It then penetrates the cell and enters the cytoplasm, where it uncoats that viral envelope, and that RNP core enters the cytoplasm and begins transcription. As I mentioned, that negative stranded RNA must first be transcribed into positive RNA before it can be used for replication. Following that, you have translation of those 5 proteins, and then you have replication. And what's very interesting about replication of rabies is I read that there's a ratio between leader RNA and N protein that occurs in transcription and translation. And once there is a ratio present between leader RNA and the N protein, it activates a switch from transcription to replication, which is very dangerous because replication then becomes nonstop. That stop codon is no longer recognized, and replication occurs at a rapid rate, and that's why rabies is a very, very fatal disease. After the virus replicates, it assembles into viral particles and is surrounded by that M protein matrix, and then it buds out of the nerve cell. So how does the virus actually reach your brain? It first enters through the bite of a rabid animal. It travels up your peripheral nervous system to that dorsal root where it replicates, and you can see here it's that color change between cream and green. That's where it replicates in that dorsal root and enters your central nervous system. It then travels up the spinal cord to the brain and begins rapidly replicating, and that's where you commonly see brain inflammation. And then after that, after the brain, it will migrate to your salivary glands, where it exits the body. And it's not known why rabies does migrate to the saliva. It's just known that it does as a mode of exit. So the incubation period of rabies could last anywhere from weeks to months, and this all depends on the site of infection. So if the dog bites you in your shoulder, that incubation period is going to be less because it doesn't take as long to travel up to your brain. Whereas if you were bit in the foot, it's going to take a longer time for that virus to reach your brain. And it's important to note that rabies is not infectious during that incubation period, and symptoms are typically only seen once that virus replicates in your brain. So those first symptoms include weakness, fever, headaches, and possible itching or stinging around the infection site. And these are very similar to a flu virus signs and symptoms. Then you have secondary signs that occur about 3 to 5 days after those initial signs, and these include cerebral dysfunction, confusion, and anxiety. And then symptoms worsen from there, and you start to see abnormal behavior. This could be very aggressive behavior, which is typically seen in animals and humans as well. You start hallucinating, you get hydrophobia, insomnia, and foaming at the mouth, which is a common symptom that you see out there in the world. And these are all considered acute symptoms, and they last for about 2 to 10 days. And after 2 to 10 days, unfortunately, the virus is almost always fatal, and that's why this disease is very serious. And so because once clinical signs appear, treatment is only supportive because that virus has replicated so much and has done a lot of damage to your body and to your brain, to where that treatment is only going to be supportive and does not have enough firepower to eliminate that virus from the body. That's why there's less than 20 documented cases of human survival after clinical signs, and this is typically due to like they already have a rapid immune response, or they've been previously vaccinated for PEP. Animal symptoms and human symptoms are also very similar. So how is rabies diagnosed in animals and in humans? So for animals, you typically see a DFA test, a direct fluorescent antibody test, and this essentially just takes a brain sample tissue from the animal who has usually passed away already from rabies, and they incubate that brain sample with anti-rabies antibodies, and those antibodies are fluorescently labeled, and they will detect rabies antigens within that sample. So as you can see in the bottom right here, that fluorescent green is a positive rabies test under DFA, whereas this red here is a negative sign or a negative test. It can also be diagnosed through electron microscopy. If you look at a brain sample tissue under the electron microscope, you look for those bullet-shaped particles, and it's very interesting. I saw an image online where those bullet-shaped particles are all gathered together, and it almost looks like a beehive in that brain tissue. And it can also be seen under the microscope for if the virus is stained as well. Human diagnosis. There are several tests required to diagnose rabies before death, because you're typically not going to take a brain sample tissue from a person who's still living. You can take a brain sample tissue from a person who has passed away from rabies to test them for the virus, but for those who are still alive, they test for in the saliva, hair follicles, skin, and the spinal fluid. So PCR tests are used to test the saliva for rabies. The spinal fluid is tested for antibodies, and then the skin at the base of hair follicles contains a lot of nerves, and rabies virus antigens are tested in those nerves through skin biopsies. So how to treat and prevent rabies for animals: vaccinate your pets and stay up to date with them. My mom, who's a veterinarian, says that these two vaccines here, Rabivac and Novavac, are two of the most common vaccines used for animals and pets. Mode of prevention: try to keep your pets away from stray and feral animals who have not been neutered or spayed or vaccinated and could be rabid. And you should also spay and neuter animals so we prevent an increase in population of feral animals who have a high chance of contracting rabies. And for humans, pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, is just your normal vaccine, your rabies vaccine, HDCV or PCECV, and most of us have one of these vaccines if we have been vaccinated, and this is just pre-exposure. This is before you possibly contract rabies, and it's just a mode of protection. However, if you have been exposed to rabies, this is where you undergo PEP, post-exposure prophylaxis, and this consists of a single dose of HRIG, but this is only for previously unvaccinated persons. So they'll receive a single dose of HRIG along with a single dose of your normal PrEP vaccine. And then following those 2 initial doses, which are given to the site of infection, you'll receive 3 following doses on days 3, 7, and 14. So where is rabies primarily seen today? In the United States, the CDC says that over 90% of reported animal cases of rabies occur in the wild. But before 1960, most cases were domestic animals because there was less access to the vaccines for animals. But now most pets are vaccinated for rabies. And then human deaths from rabies have decreased from about 100 to about 1 or 2 annually since 1900. And this is just due to greater access to the vaccine, more vaccines out there, greater availability, and more people are getting vaccinated for rabies. However, that's not the case for the rest of the world, especially in developing countries. About 59,000 deaths worldwide are caused by rabies. 99% of these deaths are caused by rabid dogs as well. And then countries with little access to public healthcare systems that have lower access to the rabies vaccine. And you also see in highly populated areas like India and some African nations who have little access to the rabies vaccine, they live in close quarters to each other, and there are animals that are around them all the time, and they do have less access to vaccines for animals because those vaccines are very costly, and there are little programs in those developing countries that will vaccinate animals, which is why 99% of deaths caused in the rest of the world are by rabid dogs, because there is less animal vaccines available. So as you can see here from this map, the A is just your overall number of deaths per country, typically seen in these nations, and then B is your average death per capita, about 100,000. And as you can see here in A, highly populated area, India, China, and these African nations are where you primarily see cases of rabies. And then obviously you have this large Russian nation here, which is just a large population, and which is why there's going to be more deaths reported there. And then in B here you see average number of deaths per capita, and you see here in these African nations with little access to the vaccine, and in India here where most reported cases are known. So that's it. Thank you for listening.